Hello Fly Riders, Hector here with another tech tip. Today we're going to learn how to set up your sag for your front fork and your rear suspension on your full suspension electric mountain bike. So the main reason why we set up sag for the bike is to make sure that there is even suspension or even performance from the front fork and the rear suspension. You'd hate to go out on a ride and your front fork to be extremely squishy and the rear to be really firm, or vice versa. So that's why you need to set up sag equally between the front fork and the rear suspension. So let's get started. Keep in mind these are general tips. So utilize that user manual for your front fork and your rear suspension for accurate pressures. First off, we're going to work on the front fork. Most forks come with a little table on the fork itself, so you can add as much pressure or take away as much pressure as needed for your rider weight. Utilize that chart first so that you can add the correct amount of pressure to the fork. Once you find out how much pressure to add, let's add it to the fork. Make sure that the fork compression and the rear suspension is open. Remove the cap and install a suspension-specific pump. You can repeat this process for the rear suspension as well. Next, you can remove the pump and now replace the cap before you hop on the bike. First, we're going to measure the front fork and how far it sits or sags when you sit on the bike. If you have a partner, they can sit on the wheel so that you can have balance while you're jumping up and down on the bike. Otherwise, use a wall so you can get balance to set up the sag. I tend to jump up and down a couple times, and then I use the marker that is on the fork stanchion to mark exactly where that percentage sag is. For example, that front fork is at 160 millimeters of travel. So at 25% sag, that means that the marker is going to move 40 millimeters. Then you can repeat the process for the rear. For the rear suspension on this bike, the stanchion is 65 millimeters long. So at 25% sag, the indicator should show about 16.25 millimeters. You can measure this using a measuring tape. Certain forks and rear suspensions have that percentage sag already stamped onto the fork, so you won't need to measure that with a measuring tape. Remember, your suspension will work most optimally if you have your front and rear suspension at the same sag percentage. Most people set up sag between 20 and 40%. I'm somewhere at the 25 range just for my style of riding. That's what makes me comfortable. So go ahead and play with your percentages just as long as the front and the rear are equal. That's our tech tip for today. My name is Hector with Fly Rides, and enjoy the ride.